Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a nice meal, feel well fed and rested. I've been asked to make just a reminder for the dana. The registration fee that is offered is to support the center, and then any dana you want to give for the teachers, it would be in addition to that. And you can offer that in the basket there at the table. We take square also, right, or check, cash. And of course, just give what you can. And like I said earlier, within your capacity is absolutely fine. We appreciate your generosity, which is one practice of Buddhism, is to practice generosity. And dana is an opportunity to do that. So let's just take a moment and arrive again. Close your eyes and settle in. Allow the breath to travel down into your belly, and with the exhalation, release any tension, tightness. Feel each breath bringing you more and more into the present moment, this feeling of mindfulness of the body, including the breath. Feel the sensations of the hips or feet on the floor, the clothes against your skin, the temperature of the air. The flow of the breath in and out. Seeing if each exhalation you can release kind of busy mental energy and let it melt and soften, and feel your awareness descending down into the belly. Feel the breath filling the belly, kidneys, low back, side. And recognizing the capacity to be present with others starts with ability to be present with oneself. And turning inward, feeling this sense of inner spaciousness. And a tender heart, capable of holding and allowing and feeling all manner of emotions. In the Lojong Tonglen practice of sending and receiving, this heart is the tender heart of compassion, of bodhicitta. And we'll take a moment to arouse a heartfelt motivation that our time together be of benefit to ourselves and others near and far, friends and enemies. Thank you. So, welcome back. So now it's my turn to guide. After Carla so beautifully guided us this morning, I feel so touched and honored to be here, and excited in a very humble way to see what comes of the work that Carla's established in the morning. And what we'll do now is, in a sense, take whatever we put in the corner over there before lunch, or anything new, maybe something's grown out of that, and work with it in this practice called feeding your demons, so that we can learn from it. We can integrate it, dialogue with the challenge, whatever it might be, and then feed it through our compassion, through our intention, and I'll explain how that works. And then when it feels completely nourished, then watch how it transforms. And that transformative energy is then free to become what's called the ally. So what is the wisdom that is tied up in that knot of suffering? Because if you think about it, whether it's anger or excuse me, regret or guilt, sadness, whatever it is, it's like knotted up energy. And as Carla talked about also on Wednesday, it can block. It's like a feeling of blocking our freedom, blocking our experience of freedom. And when we can liberate or release the knotted up energy around that emotion, then it has the freedom to manifest as something else, as something different. And usually when it's loosened and opened, there's some nugget of wisdom or guidance or realization there. It's like, oh, that wasn't all bad. You know, it was there for a reason. It wanted to teach me something. It needed to say something. And so that's what we're going to get into. And then we can dialogue with that ally and learn from it. So in this day long, what we would like to do, as you probably have already gathered, is really focus on the demons and allies that come about due to race and issues around race. So we may have, what's so brilliant about the Feeding Your Demons practices is that it can be used in so many different spheres. And even when we do narrow in on a specific goal or issue like racism, got a frog in my throat, the whole plethora of simple human emotions come out of that. It's not other, it's not something totally different than other issues, you know, like we've been talking about. Loneliness, guilt, shame, sadness. I keep touching on the same ones because they're not mine, those are mine. All of these simple human emotions can be dealt with and worked with and integrated and learned from in the Feeding Your Demons practice. So Lama Tsultrim Alioni developed this 5-step practice based on a very old Tibetan Buddhist practice called chud. Chud means to sever or to cut. And it's a healing ritual and a sadhana, you could say, or a practice that is done for healing. Healing oneself, healing the land, healing the spirits of the land and the surrounding area, and healing other people, animals, and so on. But what this word chut, that means to sever, is actually getting at, beneath all of that, is this severing or dissolving or cutting our attachment onto our sense of separate selfhood. I'm over here and you're over there. My happiness is more important than your happiness, and I have to do everything I can to preserve my happiness. I mean, God, we can really see implications in that with race and race relations. And so when the founder of Chud taught, her name was Machig Labdrön. It was a woman, which is very rare in Tibet and also in India. You did not see during the medieval era and even before many women, if at all any women, develop and teach and claim their own teaching. So that in and of itself is a very interesting moment in history, and the practice just spread like wildfire all across Tibet and was practiced widely in all the different lineages. It's a very powerful practice, and you can learn more about it in many different ways we can share at the end of the day if you want to. So Lama Tsultrim had practiced chud and taught it for many years and felt that it was so good and important, but a lot of Westerners weren't really able to access the deeper therapeutic aspects of it, because the practice itself is sung in Tibetan, it's done with a drum and a bell, it's a ritual. which some Westerners, many Westerners, were not able to really access on a deep, deep level. So she began to think, well, what is the main gestalt underneath this practice? The main gestalt is a moment in the practice where we actually offer, it's like Tonglen, where you offer that which you would normally hold close, your body, and you transform it into nectar, and you feed this nectar to all beings, whether they're the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the protectors, humans, animals, beings in hell realms, hungry ghosts, your karmic debtors, disease-bearing beings, like cancer, for example. Those are disease-bearing beings. Little viruses and bacteria, you could say, are the certain kinds of disease-bearing beings. It doesn't have to be ghosts and other kind of more mythological expressions of that. I had too much chai during lunch. 2 chais instead of 1. 1 is enough. And so in this moment of the practice, you release, you're grasping onto that which you normally hold dearest, and you transform it into nectar and feed all of these beings, including your enemies. And you offer it so that they can then become completely satisfied and essentially heal and leave you alone. Okay, you're satisfied and you can go away. But it's also a way of releasing our self-grasping, dak zin in Tibetan. Dak means self, zin means to hold or to grasp, to, in a sense, apply a salve onto it, or a solvent onto that grasping tendency, and dissolve it so that then we can just be what we are truly, which is totally liberated and not just my own little sense of self with my own little karmas and kleshas, afflictive emotions and so on, but actually a greater Buddha mind, and experience that. And it is also a profound act of love and compassion, just like we've been practicing in the weekly group of Tonglen, with the sending and the receiving. So sending out love and compassion and healing and taking in the suffering of others in the world, transforming it at the heart and sending it out. It's the same kind of alchemical gestalt where we are flipping our normal tendencies upside down, reversing the knee-jerk habitual reaction to keep what's good over here for me, and just hope everybody else, whatever, can handle themselves on their own. So what's beautiful is I was thinking about this work, and I know it's Martin Luther King holiday weekend, and this is a very auspicious, I think, weekend to be doing the work that we're doing, and a quotation by him is, "Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend." And that is right in line with what we're doing with the Chud, and with the feeding your demons, and with the Tonglen sending and receiving practice. So Lama Tsoltrim created this gestalt, or this 5-step practice, using the main gist of the Chud practice, and blended it with certain forms of dialogue therapy and gestalt therapy. So it's a modernization, an upgrade, you could say, of this ancient practice for the modern practitioner. She says that feeding your demons is Chud in Western clothing. Okay, and it's fabulous. It's really brilliant, and many of us have benefited greatly from it. So. The reason why she uses the word demon is because in Tibet that's the word that's used with the Chud practice, and it's really, though, not meant to refer to external demons and goblins or ghosts or people out there. When the founder of the Chud practice was asked by her son, what is the meaning of demon, she said, a demon is anything that blocks your experience of freedom. Anything, whether it's outer stimuli, outer phenomenon, outer circumstances, or inner circumstances and dynamics. What's very interesting is that when you look at the etymology of the word demon, you'll learn that the root of the modern word demon goes back to the old Latin word of daemon, D-A-E-M-O-N, or sometimes D-A-I-M-O-N, which is actually connected to the earlier Greek word of genius. So isn't that interesting? And so what it refers to is that inner spark, actually the inner guide, and what they believed at that time is that we are all born with a daemon in our life, a spirit guide, who helps us in our life. And so what happened during the growth of Christianity and kind of the institutionalization of Christianity and more of the power dynamics is that was actually a threatening proposal for the Christian church. Because if each of us had our own God or our own spirit guide, then we wouldn't need a priest and we wouldn't need to rely on the one God, the one great God up in the sky somewhere. And so through the Christian movement in the early days and trying to stamp out pagan beliefs, which is essentially what that was at the time, they said those daemons that you believe in and pray to are actually devils. They're demons. They're devils. You cannot trust them. You cannot trust your inner guidance. You have to trust the church. And so the very word daemon turned more into demon and then was demonized. The whole idea was flipped upside down and turned into something negative. So what I really find interesting is that when we go back and we befriend or dialogue with this so-called demon, which we think might be negative, we actually realize that it's more of a daemon, that it's more of an ally. Nothing is inherently good and bad. Nothing. There's always a little yin within the yang, a little yang within the yin. Nothing is completely bad. Nothing is completely good. So this suffering that we may feel in our life for some reason has something to tell us. That demon becomes the daemon, becomes the ally. So for me, that's very exciting. It's the alchemical journey. It's the transformative journey that we're using the energy of our own life and our own messy emotions to wake up. And that's very much what Dharma is about, especially the later teachings of Tantra. Vajrayana Buddhism was very big on that. They really brought that to the foreground. Any questions or comments about that? Anything not clear about the logic or what the view I'm offering? Yeah? Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll go into the 5 steps and then I'll guide you through it. Okay? So, the first step is very important. The first step is to feel where this so-called demon lives in your body. Where is the challenge? So even as I'm speaking now, you can start to feel into what that might be. So if through the discussion with Carla, I'll just say, for example, for me, I feel a feeling of, what's the word I'm trying to find? Like a feeling of being in over my head with this issue. I feel I'm not ready for it. It's like the classic warrior's journey, or what's a better word for warrior? The warrior's journey, like you never feel ready for the journey, no matter what. No matter how much preparation you make, you're always going to feel insufficient, I think is maybe a feeling that came up, or maybe there's a better one that can come. But so a feeling of insufficiency, or I don't know if I can hold it or if I'm ready for this. And fear and excitement around that. Okay, so I'm using myself as an example. So that feeling of fear and excitement, of not quite knowing if I'm ready for the task at hand, where does that live in my body? Oh, it's in my belly. It feels like anxiety or a little nervousness. So that's the first step, is finding that feeling and feeling where it is most strongly in your body. It's very important to be tactile and somatic about this. It's not an idea. We really need to drop out of the head space and into the body feeling space for this work to really offer the jewels that it has to offer. Okay? So that's the first step. Feel it in your body. The second step is then to give it now, just so you know, I'm going to guide you through this whole thing, so you don't have to memorize this, don't worry about that. The second step is then allow it to take form in front of you. So just for the course of the practice, you can imagine that it temporarily takes form in front of you, and then you notice, what does it look like when it takes form in front of you? Sometimes it can be helpful to use your hands or make a gesture. I often find that that's helpful. But you don't have to do that. You can sometimes, maybe it's just ready to go and say, hello, I'm here. Whatever it looks like. It might be a real strong, wrathful looking character. It might be a demure, frightened, doe or child, or it could be anything. That's the most important thing, is to trust whatever appears is there for a reason, and you don't have to understand exactly why it's there. So whatever the imagery is, trust it. If it looks like a Disney cartoon, don't second guess yourself. Go with it. First thought, best thought. Then I will guide you to really notice the details of this being that's taken form in front of you, and then ask it 3 questions. What do you want? What do you need? So what is the need beneath the want? And then how will you feel when you get what you really need? So these 3 questions are step by step getting more deeply into the heart of the matter. So what do you want? Well, the more superficial or immediate want might be something like, so if I'm working with my fear of insufficiently or not being good enough, that probably is touching down to a familiar one. So not being good enough, the critic, this type of thing. Oh, I want to feel loved. Or what I want is to be accepted. That would probably be the first thing. Okay, what's the need beneath that want of being accepted? Oh, I want to feel loved. Because loved is more of like a feeling. So what is the feeling that's really there? And then beneath that might be, well, when I feel loved, because that third question is, how will you feel when you get what you really need? Okay, so deeper feeling. What would it feel like to feel loved or to be loved? Oh, I would be so happy. I would feel whole. I would feel good just as I am, not needing to fix. There's no sin, there's no guilt, there's nothing wrong, no shame, just perfect as I am. I'd feel whole. So that third answer is getting at a feeling tone. It's very important to drop into the feeling tone of what it would be like to really get what you need. Okay, so then you switch positions and become the demon and answer. So it's very important to understand that the first step is to feel it in your body. The second step is to give it form and ask those questions. I'm going to guide you through asking those questions one after another. You're not going to wait for the answer. You're going to immediately switch places after you've asked those 3 questions and become the demon. This is the interesting, transformative Gestalt aspect of this. Is you get to switch positions. You'll have an empty seat in front of you. You switch the position and turn to face your original self and take the seat of the demon. Feel what it's like to be whatever it is that appeared to you. And then from that place, I will guide you to speak as the demon and answer those 3 questions. Okay? Once you've done that, then I'll guide you to switch back to your original seat. And this is the main heart of the practice, which is, as your normal self, you once again see this being in front of you. You imagine that either you dissolve your body into nectar, or you create an infinite amount of nectar in some way that comes to you intuitively. Sometimes it can just be like light flowing from you to the being. It can be liquid or water or rain coming down from the sky. It can be anything. Anything that comes to your imagination is fine. And you imagine that you feed this nectar to this being until complete satisfaction is reached. And the nectar has the quality of the answer to that third question, how you would feel when you got what you really need. So for example, if I really wanted to feel wholeness, love, then I would feed this demon nectar that had the quality or the flavoring of wholeness and love. You see? It's like you're feeding it what it actually has wanted all along. You're finally offering it. Because if you think about it, for the most part, most of us, rather than feeding this energy, we try to starve it. Go away. You're not there. I don't want to feel you. You know? So you're doing the opposite and you're feeding. It's just like the Tonglen. So then, after the feeding has taken its full arc and the so-called demon, intuitively you'll feel like, okay, now it's satisfied, because oftentimes it'll shapeshift, maybe it'll get smaller and disappear, sometimes it'll transform into something else. So when you feel, usually when I guide the group, as the guide, I set a certain kind of pace with it, and so I'll give you some time here. This can take time. Yeah. Then when you feel that the being is completely satisfied, I will guide you then to invite an ally to appear. So sometimes the ally just appears before I even ask you to invite the ally. Other times you have to kind of say, okay, ally, please come. You know, you have to actively invite and open the space for it. And then you notice what appears. Some kind of expression of that the demon is liberated and then can take form as something else. Maybe it's an animal totem, maybe it's a deity, maybe it's Jesus, maybe it's Tara, maybe it's a Buddha or a monkey or Hanuman, or it can be anything. It could be a butterfly. It could be a bear. It could be a child. It could be an old grandfather or grandmother. You know, it can be anything. And so then when the ally appears, then I'll guide you to ask it some questions. And just like we did with the demon, you'll ask the questions and then immediately switch places and become the ally. Do you see the logic behind this? Is this making sense to you? This is very important, because if you don't understand the logic, then you can kind of feel like, oh, I don't get it. Hold on, let me finish the sentence and then you can ask. You're allowing this to appear. Normally we would stop there and think, oh, there's my totem over there. Or, oh, my demon's over there. But instead of stopping there, we switch positions and we actually embody it and then speak from it. So then in that moment you realize, I am that. I'm also that. I am my demon. And I'm also my ally. It's not dualistic. You realize, oh, these are all aspects of myself and I can speak from that. I have the wisdom voice within me, but I also have the confused, angry voice within me. Yes?
This is a scary process for me. And is there anything that's been developed over the last 1,000 years or so to help deal with that fear of approaching this openly and honestly? Because I want to benefit fully from it, but I'm very frightened because I've been finding myself as in this context in so long.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a very good question. What I would like to invite you to do is to experience this process and then see, okay, you know, oftentimes if we don't really let it in or dialogue with it, it can actually be more powerful while it's still out there. But through the safety and the container of this practice that's been tried and tested for many, many years based on a very even more ancient practice, I can say to you with a lot of confidence that the way you're feeling right now and the fear that's coming up around this will probably feel quite different once you've moved through the 5 steps and then had the resolution on the other side. You're in a safe place, and also this does entail a certain or require a certain degree of courage, without a doubt. So it's like the archetypal journey of befriending that which we haven't been able to befriend. And having said that, if there's some way that you feel that you could digest this at a more kind of step-by-step way, it might not be necessary, actually. I'm sensing that it isn't, but I just want to give that, like if this feeling that you're feeling right now is a 10, you could also feel like, well, where is there a 5 aspect of this if it feels too much for me right now? So I want to give everybody that permission to do that, to work with. You don't have to work with the biggest, baddest, most frightening thing today. Maybe that comes later when you're feeling more familiar with the practice. Having said that, this practice of chud and feeding your demons is very much about working with your fear directly and not questioning the voice that tells you that you can't handle it. So I invite you to feel into both of those possibilities and see what feels right in the moment. And when I'm guiding it, you'll have a chance to really again feel like, okay, what wants to come through right now? Do you want to say anything about that, or does that feel like enough?
I think just that. I just always remind myself that what is going to be worked with here and in other moments is a feeling that I have. The feeling is inside me, so it's not as if it's something from outside of me that I'm working with right now. And that, as you said, that feeling has a lot of power. So if we were to look at my anger has a lot of power internally, projected outside. In this process, all I'm doing really is externalizing it so that I can have a conversation with it. But in some instances, in that conversation, it can't hurt me because it's a part of me. And it's a part of. It is not all of me. Right? Each emotion and even my thought, they're not the all of me. It's a part of me. And so just to throw that out so people are not feeling, because sometimes when this is being taught or when I teach this, Hollywood and Disney have a whole thing about demons and ghosts and goblins and, these things outside that are coming, my story, they're coming to get me, they're chasing me. That's not happening here. And so I just offer that.
So the 4th step is to work with the ally, feeding and then work with the ally. And then after the dialogue with the ally, I'll invite you to come back to your original seat and receive the blessings, the love, the compassion, the healing energy of the ally. And imagine that then in the form of light dissolves into you, permeates every cell of your body. And then you yourself dissolve into open spaciousness. So we have this, and then you rest in awareness. That's the 5th step, is resting in awareness. And this is a very wonderful moment, and it brings everything to a culmination. And then you, in your own practice, depending on the amount of time that you have, you can rest there for as long as you want. You can stay for 5 minutes, you can stay for 3 hours. Because what happens is when you've kind of done your internal housekeeping with the feeding your demons practice, it's like dusted out all little cobwebs in the corners and you've kind of attended to the messiness of the inner life. sitting in meditation it's like you naturally arrive there. It's so interesting to feel the difference between doing the Feeding Your Demons practice and sitting versus just sitting. Oftentimes we come to the seat with a lot of stuff that's still flying around in there. And if our mindfulness capacity is weak or not as strong as the neuroses, then it kind of doesn't stand a chance, right? But if we can dialogue with and pacify and feed and heal those thought patterns that cause us to spin, the mind movie, woo, then we can just rest in our natural state quite much more easily and accessibly. So resting in awareness is the 5th step. So any questions about that before we dive in? Yes? That's what I'm going to guide you with now. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, so remember before we broke for, she asked what feeling should we be working with? There's no should. First of all, we're taking should out of the vocabulary in the room in terms of you should do this or you should feel this. So don't even worry about that. But you might recall that before lunch we had some feelings in the room, and Carla invited you to place them in the basket for lunch. So what I'm going to, right over there, you see the basket?
The basket is under the speaker.
And the basket is under the speaker. So when we start the process, I'm going to give you some time to then go in the basket and find where you put your feeling and pull it out and bring it back in, and oh yeah, that's what that felt like. Now if you forgot to put the feeling in the basket, you will also have time to bring up the feeling. So what we want is to really allow today to be about starting to meet and heal and feed and discover the ally wisdom in these very sticky, difficult emotional reactions to oppression and privilege. Okay? Cool. Good question. I'm sure you weren't the only one who thought that. Okay. Any other questions before we dive in? You ready? Okay. So let's take a moment to set up. So I'm wondering if I can get a couple assistants to help me hand out some. Can you? Great. Okay, so everybody gets 2. Yeah, maybe Dominica, you can take that side. Yeah, I think that's good. You can take that side. Everybody gets 2. 2 of that. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. We'll sit somewhere where we have a seat.
I'll hand those out later.
Yes, I think we're going to be moving
Right. Okay, so while that's happening, then everybody can start to spread out. And what you're going to do is have your chair and then have an empty chair or an empty cushion in front of you. And you can, this room is so good, it's big, and you can spread out to all the 4 corners and find a...
chairs around.
Yeah, you can move the chairs around, take your space, and take that sheet that you've got and a pen and maybe a surface to write on. Yeah, there are more pens over if you need a pen. There are pens on the desk over where Bill is here. Raise your hand if you need a handout. Thank you. I think we're all set. Make sure you have a pen too, or pencil. Everybody should have an empty chair or cushion in front of them, because you're going to switch positions. more cushions up here. If anybody wants to sit on the floor, there's plenty of cushions. Alan, please make sure that it's facing you because you're going to have your eyes closed, and I want everybody to be safe and easy to switch positions without having to open the eyes very much. Yeah, that's good. And then make sure your water bottle's not going to get kicked over in the middle of the transition. Okay, so same for people at home, making a good setup where you have an empty cushion or chair in front of you, and when you're ready, start to settle in and close your eyes and put your paper and your pen off to the side. You're not going to need it until the very, very end. So just put that down off to the side. Make sure that the seat in front of you is empty. Close the eyes and begin to take some deep breaths and settling into your seat. Just trusting you don't have to do anything. There's no should here. There's just a following of my words from step to step. The first aspect of the practice is to relax by taking 9 relaxation breaths. The first few breaths, and breathe into any physical tension you're holding in your body. And then hooking that tension with the breath, release it with the out-breath. And then for the next few breaths, breathe into any emotional tension you're holding. Notice where you're holding emotional tension in your body. Then hooking that tension with the breath, release it with the out-breath. And for the last few breaths, breathe into any mental tension or worries you're holding. Notice where you're holding mental tension in your body. And then hooking that tension with the breath. Release it with the out-breath. And then we'll take a moment to generate a heartfelt motivation to practice for the benefit of yourself and all beings. And now, the first step, finding the demon in your body. So take a moment now to feel into what you would like to work with today. What is that feeling that you put in the basket before lunch? What was coming up for you? Challenge? Where do you feel stuck, especially around these issues of racism, privilege, oppression? Maybe there are a few or even more feelings that come up around this issue, so I invite you to work with whatever is most to the surface now. What is tangible? What is up for you? It might not be what you think, so honestly feel into what it is that wants to be healed, that wants to be heard. What's been blocking you? Blocking your experience of freedom. And then really feel what it feels like in your body, rather than the thought or the idea or the storyline around it. Drop down into the body. And where does this feeling live most strongly in your body? Maybe it may be helpful to remember a particular time or incident when it came up strongly. Scan your body and locate where you are holding this demon most strongly in your body. And notice where is it held in your body? And what is the shape of this feeling? What is the color? What is its texture? What is its temperature? Is it hot? Is it cold, warm, or maybe neutral? What is the temperature of this feeling? And now for a moment, intensify this sensation. And then now allow this sensation, color, texture, and temperature to move out of your body and become personified in front of you as a being with limbs, a face, eyes, and so on. Personify the demon in front of you. If an inanimate object appears, imagine what it would look like if it were personified as some kind of animate being. And then notice the following about the demon. What is its size? And what is its color? What is the surface of its body like? What is its density? Does it have a gender? And what is its character? Its emotional state. And what is the look in its eyes? The look in its eyes. And now notice something about the demon that you did not see before. And now ask the demon the following questions. I'll guide you one by one without waiting for the answer. What do you want? You can speak aloud. Speak out loud. What do you want? What do you really need? What do you really need? And how will you feel when you get what you really need? How do you feel when you get what you really need? Having asked the questions now, as much as you can, keep your eyes closed and switch positions. Taking the empty seat in front of you. Facing your original seat, but with the eyes closed, settle in and take a moment to settle into the demon's body. Feel what it's like to be the demon. Feel what it's like to be the demon. You may like to take an expression or a position that helps you really get into the skin of the demon. What is it like? What does it feel like? And now notice how your normal self looks from the demon's point of view. How does your normal self look from the demon's point of view? And now, speaking as the demon, answering those questions, I'll provide you with the first part of the answer. The rest you complete under your breath, quietly to yourself, speaking as the demon. What I want is... What I want is... What is that immediate need, the demon? What does it want? what I want is. Allow yourself to really speak as the demon. Answer that. As the demon. What I really need is what I really need is what is the need beneath the want? When I get what I really need, I will feel. When I get what I really need, I will feel. And take note of this feeling, the answer to the third question. When I get what I really need, I will feel. And now, when you're ready, return to your original seat, keeping your eyes closed. Take a moment to settle back into your own body and see the demon opposite you. And then dissolve your body into nectar, or imagine that you create an infinite supply of nectar. And the nectar has the quality of the feeling that the demon would have when it gets what it really needs. The answer to the third question. And imagine offering, feeding the demon this nectar in any way that comes to you. And notice the color of the nectar. Feed the demon this nectar and notice how the demon takes it in. Feeding the demon to complete satisfaction. This can take some time. feeding the demon to complete satisfaction. If the demon seems insatiable, imagine how it would look if it were completely satisfied. And now notice if there is a being present after the demon is completely satisfied. If there is a being present in place of the demon, ask this being if it is your ally. If it is not your ally, then invite an ally to appear. Or if there is no being present after feeding the demon, then invite an ally to appear now. And when you see the ally, notice all the details of the ally, such as its size, its color, the surface of its body. Its density. Does it have a gender? What is its character? What is its emotional state? What is the look in its eyes? And now notice something about the ally you didn't see before. And now you'll ask the ally some questions. I'll guide you and you can speak aloud, one after the other. Feeling connected with the ally as you ask these questions. How will you help me? How will you help me? How will you protect me? What pledge do you make to me? And how can I access you? Now change places and become the ally. Keeping your eyes closed as much as possible. And take a moment to settle into the ally's body. Notice how it feels to be in the ally's body. You may wish to make an expression or a gesture that helps you embody the energy of the ally. And then notice how your normal self looks from the ally's point of view. And then now answering as the ally, speaking as the ally. I'll give you the first part of the sentence and you can repeat quietly to yourself, completing in a full sentence. I will help you by. I will help you by. Speaking as the ally. I will help you by. I will protect you by. I will protect you by. I pledge I will. I pledge I will. And you can access me by. You can access me by. And now, when you're ready, return to your original seat, eyes closed, and take a moment to settle back into your own body and see the ally opposite you. See the ally in front of you and look into its eyes and feel its energy pouring into your body. As you feel the energy of the ally coming into your body, it spreads all the way down to the soles of your feet, to your fingertips, and throughout your whole body. And now imagine that the ally dissolves into light. And notice the color of this light. Feel this light dissolving into you, integrating this luminosity into every cell of your body. And take note of the feeling of the integrated energy of the ally in your body. And now you, with the integrated energy of the ally, dissolve into open, spacious awareness, and rest in awareness. Just allow yourself to rest. And now gradually come back to your body, feeling the breath in the body, the clothes against your skin. Recalling the feeling of the energy of the ally in your body. And as you open your eyes, maintain the feeling of the energy of the ally in your body. And then with this awareness, you can slowly get your piece of paper and your pen and begin to write and journal. The form is a guide. If you don't remember everything, that's absolutely fine. And just jot down as much as you can, remembering as much of the qualities, the imagery that arose to you, the words of the demon and the ally. And we'll take about 10 minutes to journal. So if you're ready, you can start to make your way back to your original seat. If you still have a whole novel to write, you can maybe just jot down some key words that will help you remember for later and more journaling. So now we'd like to open it up for you to share if you have any reflections, questions, realizations, or it can also be nice to share the imagery that came up. Sometimes it's very vivid and surprising or funny or strange, and the images speak so much in a way. Like, for example, if you're sharing what you worked with, you don't necessarily have to name the exact issue or demon you're working with. Unless you want to, you can. But you can also just talk about it in terms of the imagery that came up and then what happened as you fed and what the ally looked like when it came and how that felt. And it can be fun to explore that together. Yes, Sarah?
Yeah, so the demon that I saw was kind of like a big blue sloth, and I think it kind of just embodied a little bit the way I feel sometimes around just like race relations, where it's just like it kind of feels like big and awkward, and maybe there's a little bit of laziness almost on my part in it, you know. And I don't know, I thought that was really interesting imagery. Definitely a new demon for me. So.
What was the ally like?
The ally kind of looked like a Kuan Yin type thing, where it's just like love and like compassion and able to see like the beauty in everyone. So that was also interesting. I've had her as an ally before, so.
Big blue sloth.
Big
blue.
sloth.
I wonder why blue.
Yes.
Do you think you know why blue?
I think it's just like, I don't know. Yeah, I think they're colored blue a lot of times. I don't know if it just like looks more vivid to me, or I can't really put I don't know exactly what's the color, but yeah, I see blue.
Sometimes the color has a real profound meaning, and other times it might not be so resonant.
Like, kind of like a somberness, or like once again, just kind of like lethargy about like the blueness. I don't know,
Yeah, like I'm feeling blue.
Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, totally.
Blue sloth. I think we've all felt.
I agree. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
Well, first, I've been doing this practice for about 5 years, and this is one of the
Could you speak up a little bit?
Sure. Said I've been doing this for about 5 years, and this was like one of the weirdest feedings, one of the most difficult to stay present with, and just the way that the demon looked and what it was like nothing that's ever come up before. So I was feeling this sort of like right here at the base of my throat, just this tightness, like I couldn't really get a full breath. And so the demon showed up as like an esophagus with these weird cartoony features. It was really weird and gross. And I've had a lot of weird, gross demons that, you know, but this was really unique. And just the like supreme sadness and exhaustion and just languid character of this like weird throat thing was really intense, the way it was coming out of this demon. And I've typically had a lot of fierce ones, or ones with sort of a some kind of furious energy, and I was surprised that this is what came up, was just this deep, I don't know quite how to phrase it, but it just seemed so defeated and so closed off. It was really different, and really also really hard for me to stay present and not get distracted by a lot of discursive thought, and that hasn't happened in quite some time. So I don't know if it's just my discomfort with confronting this, or I wouldn't say confronting it, with having to just be present and sit with all of these thoughts and experiences, and feeling like whatever emotions are coming up, because I'm a white lady, I really don't have the right to have any real emotions or opinion on any of this. And I think I'm digressing now, but anyway, I just wanted to share that because it was, more than anything, it was really weird.
What was the ally? Do you want to share what the imagery was?
Sure. The ally is the same ally that's been coming to me since I started this practice, that just pops up a lot, and it just feels silly to say it. It's this like amalgam of a goat, a dog, and a unicorn, which are my favorite animals. And, just what it represents is both great power with great compassion and kindness. And it's just this very safe and warm ally, and also with a lot of ferocity as well, but one that keeps me safe. And it's also blind, yet kind of has this X-ray vision. So whenever I sit in the ally's seat, the way that I see myself is kind of unique. So feels kind of silly to share that, but
that's
thanks for asking.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. And it's an example of how you could probably never come up with that ally on your own if you had tried to make something happen. You know, it seems like a complete, beautiful gift from the unconscious, and it has meaning to you. And it's beautiful. Thank you. And I would say, even though you are a white lady, you do have a right to feel. Yeah, that's complicated, and I know I feel the same way sometimes, but we have to find our way through that, and how can we use the feeling, whether it's of fear or guilt or whatever, for fuel in some way, so that we can move out of that and not get stuck in that. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah. Anyone else? Dominica? And then
one of the things I'm often struck with in this practice is the difference between looking at the demon and being the demon. Mm-hmm. Like in this case, it was probably one of the most repugnant and difficult to be with demons. It was literally made out of shit, and it was like stinky and squishy and just really disgusting and so smug in its disgustingness. But when I became the demon, it was like a very small, vulnerable thing that wanted to be held and cuddled and lullabied and wanted to feel safe. And so often that's really the thing that gets me, is how different it feels from inside the demon's seat.
Thank you.
So I've never done this before. This is the first time for me. And so the demon, it was really small, and it was a mushroom. And it had been sitting in the dark, like, for such a long time. And I wasn't sure if it was poisonous or if it was a mushroom you could eat. The more I think about it, the more I connect with how that feels inside. And then when I went to feed it, I realized that it was really hungry. And it did take a while to feed it. And then it sort of morphed into like this little kitten. You know, when you're bottle feeding a kitten, and it's like, wow, this is something that I can take care of. This is something that I can hold. And then when the ally showed up, it was this really tall staff. And it was something that I could walk with, and something that felt very solid and felt very strong.
That sounds very powerful for your first time sometimes. And it sounds like you were able to engage with the process in a way that was meaningful and healing. And one thing, though, what your comments, what you're sharing brings up that I'd like to to kind of riff off of is that oftentimes what comes up, or sometimes what comes up, can be like an inanimate object, like a rock or like a mushroom or a sunflower. And what Lama Tsoltram says is that if something like it appears that is inanimate, it's helpful to imagine what it would look like if it were an animate being, because it's more easily accessible in dialogue if it's animate. So it sounds like that wasn't a hindrance for you. Sometimes people say, I just got a rock and the process didn't work for me. And I'm like, well, okay, well, that's because it's hard to talk to a rock. You have to talk to a rock. You want to invite it. Maybe it has some eyes and some funny little arms that poke out from it. And then you realize, oh, it's not a rock, it's a turtle. Or it's like there are little tricks we can play that are innocent tricks in this process of like, okay, well, what would you look like if you were an animate object? Oh, the rock turned into a turtle. Okay, so now I can, and then when it comes time to be that being, then it's more easy to feel like, okay, yeah, I'm the turtle instead of a rock. Although a rock can feel interesting and maybe helpful at times. I mean, there are times when I've worked both ways, and then with the ally, you got a staff. So I'm wondering, how was it to become the staff? I would worry that in a way it might have been a little hard to be the staff and speak from the staff. Or was it not an issue?
It was not an issue.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it was.
Tall. I felt
good.
Elongated.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So it wasn't a big issue, but I just wanted to tease that nuance out. So if you continue with the practice, you can play with that, because maybe the staff is a springboard for then, like, maybe that's all it needs to be, but then at the same time, well, what would you be if you were an animate object? Oh, I'm like, I'm thinking of the wizard and Lord of the Rings, Gandalf, or some other kind of archetypal creature that comes out of the staff, or then it's more animate, and then it's got more of a personality, and you can speak from that. But it doesn't have to be that way. If it's working, it's good. Whatever works. Whatever works, please. That's all. Sometimes that's all we need. Yes.
I'd rather not describe my demon, but I will say that it was dealing, it arose from lots of shame. It arose from that place. And what was interesting is that when I was sort of sitting in the demon seat and looking back at myself, I expected to see myself like this, but I saw myself as this sort of concatenation of all of these different experiences as a kid that sort of gave rise to, I think, that feeling of shame. And so I'm much more comfortable speaking about like the ally, because that was also a very interesting experience. It was this, oh wait, the demon needed to be fed. But the only thing that would really feed it was like literally like a big, super massive star. Like a star that just like subsumed it, and then it ended up becoming the center of it, and then it could express itself inside. It was a really interesting moment for me. But the ally was this very ancient feeling almost like it had like a throne. The throne, it's like this Egyptian throne of the east and of the south and the north. Sitting on top of it was a snake with the wings of a Garuda. And it was like a very funny guy. It was it was really embracing and wonderful and much more. I mean, I've never thought of that before. And so it was just a very wonderful practice to have experienced because it was very healing for me. Thank you so much.
It's particularly touching given what you raised before we started. So I commend you in having the courage and the trust to do that. And I'm so happy to hear that it was healing.
Thank you.
Yeah. What can be nice is if you particularly land on an ally or experience an ally that's powerful for you with imagery that communicates a lot in your healing and wisdom, then finding objects that represent that, or even doing art, and you can paint or draw or sculpt imagery that comes to you, whether it's the demon or the ally. And we do actually bring art into this 5-step process that you can learn about if you go more deeply into the practice. And then that can trigger and remind you, oh yeah, the ally, what it said to me is, fill in the, whatever the wisdom that it gave you in those questions and answers, then you can remember that and it can help guide you in your life. For example, I had an ally that was a whale, and I found just a whale postcard and I put it on my kitchen sink, and I had a whale postcard that whenever I looked at it, I remembered what my challenge was around it and what wisdom nuggets it gave to me. I had another one that was a butterfly, and when it told me, when I spoke as that butterfly to my original self in terms of how I could access it, it said to get a little butterfly locket, a little butterfly wing in the glass. There are necklaces that are made like that. And it said, get one of those and wear it, and whenever you put it on, remember me and what I taught you. So things like that, you can find ways to bring this practice off the cushion and into your life to remind you and inspire you. So the imagery that you guys all have shared is quite powerful. Anyone else? Paul?
I'm curious about something, so I'm not specifically sharing about the demon or the ally, about the physical sensations we feel. So today I threw out my back last week, and I'm finally okay because I did all the things I had to do. I saw my chiropractor, so I'm finally feeling okay, but I'm still guarded around my low back and my hips. So I came to the practice with that, and in the beginning when you said find the sensation in the body, I just went to that because that's the one shouting at me, and I don't know if it had anything to do with privilege or oppression. I'm just gonna go there, and this has happened before where I'll do the steps, and that pain, that feeling always goes away, whether it's the tightness in the jaw or whatever it is that I showed up with. Just go with it. Don't overthink about the connection. And then after the whole process, that feeling is gone. If you could speak about that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's something that I would like to draw out, is that sometimes we don't know what to work with, but we have a strong physical sensation, or we're dealing with an illness and we don't know what the cause is, or we can sense that there's emotion wrapped up around it, but we don't quite know what it is. And so it's wonderful to just sit down and work with a sensation and then let that speak and then take that through the 5 steps. So that's a really wonderful point that you brought up. And it was, what was at the surface for you most, more than perhaps some other issues that might have come up around race and privilege. So I'm glad you worked with what was really up for you. And then, yes, why is it, or how is it that when we work with these things, not all the time, but quite often, the energy moves, and a pain that we were feeling is not there anymore, or it's diminished, or an illness that we have over time, if we do this feeding, like a headache or a chronic thing or pain, or can also, Lama Tsultrim in her book Feeding Your Demons talks about the friend who had AIDS, and he practiced. It was right when she was developing this practice. And she had him do the feeding your demons every day, and the white blood cell count changed. I don't remember if it goes up or down. His T cells went up. And I would love to raise money to do a pilot study of feeding your demons, because I think we could really make scientific claims once we did a study in this, because so many people have practiced this and received benefit and healing, not just mental, emotional healing, but also physical healing through it. And one thing I can offer, maybe Carla has something as well, but one thing is that, your issues are in your tissues. It's kind of a funny little saying I learned in yoga, and it's true. So if we've got a tightness somewhere and we massage it and we feel into it and we dialogue with it, then that issue can release and move and shift. And oftentimes, like in Ayurveda, Indian medical science, they say that pain is due to an air imbalance, vata imbalance. And so if something's stuck or the wind isn't moving, the prana isn't moving in the body, then we feel density and hardness and pain and ache. So in a way, this is like a therapeutic way to move the prana in the body, and the fear and the holding and the guarding that the back muscles do when your back goes out. I have experienced that a lot, and it's important to tell it it's okay. You're okay now. You don't need to seize up all the time.
I think what you bring into our conversation is I'm a person who looks for connection. Like, what's the connection? How is this related to that? And that serves me and it works well, but it's all happening here, right? It's the mind. And what I love about feeding your demons is that there's a little bit of the bypass of that. Okay, let's let the mind be busy with this other activity and allow the body, the emotions, the unconscious to work more directly. And there may be a connection. You may never know the connection. You are experiencing the benefit, right? And so really looking at, the benefit and working with, so having experienced the benefit, then perhaps you do another time where you work with some feeling that comes up around race, oppression, privilege, something you've heard on TV or the news. You have a tool to work with it and to transform it. There's a shift that can happen. And we don't have to maybe overthink the shift. It can just happen. So that's really beautiful.
Okay. Wait, I'm looking at time.
What time is it?
I know a lot of people could share, but we do have about 10 more minutes. So I think what I'd like to do is wrap it up, or one more?
I think maybe one.
One more. I see her right behind Oceana. It's all you.
I wanted to share, I appreciated the physically embodying the demon and the ally. So I was having a little bit of a hard time tapping into it. And then when I moved into demon, I took the stance, I kind of curled over and wrapped my arm around myself. But I really did feel that it was a sense of fear and need for protection. And then when I was the ally, I was trying to hold a sense of confidence, and I spread myself out and put out my arms. And just feel this. And I had this sense to myself, I got you. You're doing okay. And so it really, doing that helped me tap into it.
Yes, good. I find that's very helpful too. Not everybody needs it, but there are certain times when it can be really helpful. Embodying, if the demon's really curled up or angry, or it can help. If you're feeling stuck, it can help you take those positions and really get into it. It's almost like drama therapy, but not. Lama makes it very clear this is not drama therapy. We're not out doing the act of the demon and the act of the ally. Although we could do something like that. That could be fun. Maybe Dominica, we should do something. But even just a small gesture or something in your seat, or sometimes people stand up. It's okay to stand up. Like sometimes the ally can be really big with big wings or different things, and I like to stand up with the ally if that imagery is coming to me. So thank you for sharing. Yeah. Okay, so one thing I'd like to say, and then I'm going to hand it over to Carla to wrap it up, is it's so important to nourish and heal ourselves so that we can be greater vessels for change in the world. We cannot forget that we need to tend to our garden at home before we go out and try to change the world. And so sometimes for us activists, we can feel like, oh, it's a waste of time, I don't deserve that, I'm not doing something. And then Buddhists get a bad rap because we're just sitting on our butt all the time and meditating on the mountain or in the cave or at our home. You know, there does come a time when it's time to come off the mountain and walk the earth and walk side by side with other people and really do the work. Now, my vision is to have it like a nice equal or somewhat equal balance of internal practice, cultivation, mindfulness, feeding your demons, whatever it is that heals you, helps you feel whole and nourished. Yoga is very important, movement, but then also swing dance, as Peggy will say, is very important, whatever it is that you enjoy doing. But then also getting out there and connecting with people and make a difference in some way that feels authentic to you. It might look very different to you than it does to you or me or Carla. We all have our own way. Some people are more extroverts, some are more introverts. Some people are better at praying at home and really holding down the shrine and lighting the candles and sending the prayers from their own place, and that's potent and powerful for them. Other people don't want to do that and want to be out in the world and teaching and marching, and we all have our different ways. So of course, not shaming if we're not like that person, or finding your way and then really becoming an activist in a way that is nourishing and sustaining for you in your life. One thing I'd like to end with is a quotation from Angela Davis a couple years ago. Her and John Kabat-Zinn, who's a mindfulness MD and developed a great practice called mindfulness-based stress reduction practice that's been brought into all sorts of different medical settings and corporate settings and so on. The two of them got together in Oakland and did a big talk. Some of us were there. Remember that a couple years ago. And they had a dialogue because she's an activist and a writer, a thinker, and not necessarily a Buddhist, whereas he's a Buddhist and a medical doctor. And they had such an interesting dialogue, and they were getting at this idea of what role does mindfulness in particular play in our world as activists, as social change agents, and so on. And something she said really touched me. She said, for activists, mindfulness allows us to think deeply about ourselves. For activists, mindfulness, it gives us an opportunity to think deeply about ourselves, and I'd like to insert feeding your demons and mindfulness. Both of those and other techniques as well, Tonglen, Lojong, Vipassana. And on the other side, or the flip side of that, for practitioners, meaning meditators, mindfulness will show us that there's still work to be done. There's still work to be done. We can't just be satisfied with sitting and watching our breath. And John Kabat-Zinn said that. He said, mindfulness isn't just about being present in the moment, it's also seeing what is pregnant in the moment. What wants to come forth in the moment. So for practitioners, mindfulness will show us that there is still work to be done. And then give us insight into how to do that work. Thank you.
Can I just, something that really triggers for me, because it came up in my piece, and that is that also we don't know the significance of what we do. Yeah. And it's easy for me to fall into a place of, oh, that's insignificant, that won't do it, and then you feel powerless, and then you feel powerless about being powerless, and that just from South Africa I know that the seemingly absolutely irrelevant things in the arc of history were absolutely essential.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say a couple of things as we wrap up. One is that as you move forward, and we have solo practice sheets, or
Yes.
they can access those. Okay. I would encourage everybody to continue feeding your demons practice. Maybe in the next week, do it once at least. Maybe you do it a couple of times. Actually, the more you do it, the faster it can go sometimes. So it doesn't have to take a whole half a day. But I would encourage you to work it, to play with it, and to work it around what might come up for you in the week or the moment. To remind you that if you're working on something that has to do with somebody else, which has flashed in my mind is an irritating boss, the boss is not the demon, even though we might like to put them in that position. Your feelings about them are the demon. Your reaction to them. So you're always working with your stuff, not projecting onto somebody else. They're the problem. No, I'm going to work on my reaction to the fact that I think they're the problem or I experience them as the problem. The other thing I would advise people, don't try to shortcut the practice in terms of shifting positions. I hear a lot of people, because I teach this a lot, it's like, no, do I really have to change seats? Yes, you do. You do, because something else happens. When you sit in the seat of the place where you saw the demon or the ally, it facilitates your being in that. Sitting in one seat and think, okay, so now I'm the demon. Well, now I'm going to be the ally. It doesn't work as efficiently or as effectively. So even though there are some days where it feels like, I don't want to move again, just keep moving. Just keep moving. I think on a physical level something happens. I think on a cellular level something happens. So keep true to the practice. And you have these forms. You could copy the one that you have. We have forms available online where you can download them. And we will be handing out the solo practice that guides you through this, so you can be guided through and really see how this works in your life. Start with a week, work towards a month, and see how it may clear your energy to be able to be on the front line, or maybe to be able to have the thought or an idea that brings a different kind of organizing to these kinds of issues. Brings some energy. Those of us who are doing this kind of work, we get tired, we get weary, we are drained. This process helps us to move that. And I want to say, no matter where we are and who we are, we have a right to our feelings, our emotional reactions. Now, we might have to work with those by ourselves or with our support staff, but we still have a right to feel and honor those feelings and use feeding your demons sometimes to transform some of them. Okay? And I want to close to just remind us, it seems really evident, but sometimes I like to state the obvious. A quote from Martin Luther King, Jr., and it's so aligned with a Buddhist view. It helps me see the synchronicity and connections in life. And he said, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. So here, talking about interdependence. And so it charges me and others to work very directly on who I ought to be, who I could be, how I could be in the world to truly be of benefit to beings. And trusting, as you say, the things that seem insignificant, trusting that that is rippling out and putting us in a position to use what some identify as love or compassion to transform what we experience as negative and oppressing. And I think that's really hard work, because it's so hard not to meet anger with anger. It's so hard not to meet hatred with hatred. And so really working in a way to shift what goes on internally so that we can all really be present to shift what's going on externally. And I want to thank everyone for your participation, your courage to be here, your willingness to share, that people actually are watching us online and have committed their time to do this work. So thank you. Would you like to do the dedication? I did the other one.
Thank you, Carla. I hope you come back again and again. Please do, I beseech you. Come back, ATS. There's this fabulous book called Feeding Your Demons, so if you're not aware of it, get it tomorrow. It's really good. And it has more explanation about how to do the 5 steps and some wonderful stories, and it's a really great book, Feeding Your Demons. Also, the Tara Mandala Bay Area Sangha, we do practices in this. We do Feeding Your Demons. We practice Chud. If you want to learn more, you can contact me or talk to our Sangha leaders here. We have a couple. There's Lenore here. Could you raise your hand? Talk to Lenore. Or Dominica, can you raise your hand? Thank you. And good. Thank you. So let's take a moment to really let in all the richness of our day together. This really was an extraordinary day. And let's bring forth a aspirational wish, a dedicative wish that our time together as a Sangha, as a community, as individuals, as activists, as practitioners, men, women, people of color, allies, that we all continue this practice of awakening out of the deep sleep of ignorance and wake up to our own true nature so that we can be refuge for others. I'd like to share a prayer of dedication. For as long as space endures, and for as long as living beings remain, until then, may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world. Thank you.